Welcome to the Retirement Roadmap by SHP Financial, a podcast empowering today's retirees and pre-retirees to make well-informed financial decisions that will help you spend more time living and dreaming than worrying and wondering. Are you ready to get started? Let's go.
Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the SHP Retirement Roadmap podcast, obviously brought to you by SHP Financial. We are super excited. We have a really special guest getting outside of the stocks, bonds, market uncertainties, taxes, and going a whole different route today. And so first, we want to welcome John Israel to the podcast. Welcome, John.
Thanks for having me.
So, John, that nickname didn't come from a clever marketing campaign. It came from, for everyone, this is, if you don't know John, it came from a simple promise that he made, and that's to write 5 thank you notes a day for an entire year, and to see what would happen if you focused on gratitude, connection, and humanity in every interaction. So it started as a personal social experiment, turned into a masterclass on human connection that has impacted millions of people around the world. Since then, John has helped thousands of business professionals rethink the way they build relationships through keynotes, coaching, and his book, The Mr. Thank You Project, which has become a go-to resource for companies looking to create cultures of appreciation and loyalty. So that's a heck of an introduction. But John, I guess, obviously, you know, the whole premise around gratitude, thank you. Funny story is our mutual friend of ours, Brad Johnson, a few years ago sent me a package of envelopes and thank you letters and said, hey, can you try mailing one out a day for 30 days? And I actually did it, and I didn't know it was from you. And I also, it worked so well that I stopped doing it. And now I'm down to like one a year. So I need to get back into it.
Isn't that how we do things? Like, oh, this is working. Fantastic. I'm going to stop.
Yes. It's too many times.
Totally. Oh, this workout's going great. Man, I should
change it up. Well, thanks for joining us. And I think we have a lot of clients and listeners. And one thing that we really try to do here at SHP, I think that my partner, Matt, Keith, the three of us in our team here, 50 plus employees, we really try to go over and above and build connections with our clients beyond just the financial statements, right? And that's a huge goal of ours. But if you look at the world in general, and I'm sure, well, you know this more than anyone through your experiment, a lot of folks just kind of put their head down, go through the day-to-day, and don't really ever take the time to, A, appreciate that day. It's always what the worries are. Or to, secondly, to give gratitude, to just be grateful for people, for the sky, for the day God gave us. Like there's things that, you know what I mean? It's a weird, when you think about it, you know it better than we do, but people a lot of times forget to pause and be thankful for everything they have instead of, we always focus on what's wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great point because gratitude is very distinct from happiness. Because you don't need to teach a child how to be happy, but you do need to teach them how to be grateful. And the reason why is because as human beings, we're born with something called a negativity bias. And a negativity bias is something that was built into our DNA and our psychology from our caveman and cavewoman days when we live out in the jungle and we hear a growl behind a rock. We wouldn't think it's a cute little kitty cat. We would assume saber-tooth tiger, and we would run away and live to see another day. And that makes sense, right? But here we are in modern day America, and we don't have to worry about saber-tooth tigers, but yet we still have that same proneness to look for the threats, to look for what's wrong before we ever notice what's right. And I think the reason why is because pessimism creates the illusion of safety. Pessimism creates the illusion of safety. What that means is if we think that because if I keep looking for what's wrong, I'm going to find it and it's going to keep me safe because if we know the dangers, we can avoid the dangers. But what's the other side of that? If all we're noticing and looking for is what's wrong, we're missing this huge opportunity to truly enjoy this amazing life that we're working so hard to create, right? So a lot of people who are listening are either retired or soon to be retired, right? That is something to not take lightly, right? I think one of my biggest, what really spurned this project, which to clarify for the audience. So I started a social experiment in 2016 where I committed to handwrite 5 thank you cards every single day for 365 days in a row. And cards had to be handwritten. Every day resets at 0. So I couldn't skip 3 days in a row and write 15 in a day. I can write a max of 3 for every person. So I couldn't write more than 3 for any one person, right? Meaning I couldn't write 75 to my mom, as much as she might have appreciated that.
And it was 5 per day. So it's funny because on the way to school, I was bringing my son to school this morning. He's 16, and I was telling him about the pod. Oh, you doing a podcast today? What are you doing? What are you doing it on? And I told him. And I said 5 thank you cards per day. He goes, nope, you have that wrong. I bet it was 5 per week. Ask him. I bet it was 5 per week, not per day. So I'm gonna have to prove Paxton wrong on this one.
Yeah, well, and so when you total that number out, it's 1,825 thank you letters in 1 year's time.
Wow.
And, I don't care who you are. Like, if you make a commitment like that to express love, gratitude, and appreciation every day, multiple times a day to different people, you will become a different person by the end of that year. And there was one other rule, and this is actually important to let the audience know, which is that for any and every day that I missed, I would donate $1,000 to charity.
Yep.
And that was important because I need accountability, as I think we all do. And that helped me focus on making sure I followed through every single day. And the point with what you were just talking about, right? We live in a world that is so focused on shoving the negativity. It's actually super easy to just be negative right now. It's super easy to look for and notice the things that aren't working. And unfortunately, if our goal is to live a happy and fulfilling life, we have to take back control of our focus. And so for me, this really was birthed out of a moment where I was an overworked, overwhelmed, highly successful business person who was just so unhappy. I was ready to walk away from all of it, everything I had spent my career building. And so this was really spurred on from my business coach at the time, because I ran and still run to this day a professional gifting agency. So we literally help people say thank you for a living. So the irony of ironies, I was like the most ungrateful gratitude salesman on planet Earth. And so our mission, the company's name is Mr. Thank You. That's where the name comes from. So our mission at Mr. Thank You is to elevate the level of gratitude on the planet. And my coach shared with me this quote, and this is what changed everything. And I'll swing this back to you guys. It's by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And here's what he says. "Excuse me, I cannot hear what you are saying because who you are speaks so loudly." Mm. And what I love and simultaneously don't love about that quote is that it challenges us to be consistent with our words. It challenges us to not just say, hey, here's what I care about, here's what matters to me, but actually to prove it in our behavior. And the problem was, here I am this guy who says he's all about elevating gratitude on the planet. But if you went out and asked 100 people who knew John Israel and said, hey, what do you know about this guy back then in 2016? They'd probably say some nice things like driven, successful. But you know what they wouldn't say? They wouldn't say grateful. They wouldn't say appreciative, and they certainly would not say happy to describe me. And so I thought, how can that be? How can I be this guy who says he's about elevating gratitude on the planet, but I don't live that out? So really this project was birthed out of this determination to live my values every day for a year and just to see what would happen. And I didn't expect it to, but it turned into something a lot more.
And now, and sorry to interrupt, Eric. So in some of the takeaways that you took from that experiment, how much was a surprise to you? I mean, knowing that you were in the sort of the gratitude business, how shocking were the results?
Well, so in the gratitude business, right? So my job is to help a company thank their clients, right? Send a nice gift, thank their employees. So in ways, there's like a monetized value of sending a gift. So there's kind of a, now, I don't want to say a give to get, because that's not the case, but it is something to note that when you give something, there's a desire to reciprocate. And so I think like conceptually I understood that. What I didn't expect was how much better every relationship I had would become because of this, like in an exponential level. And so as an example, right? So Derek, one thing that we had talked about before we started was the Front Row Dad community, right? So the Front Row Dads, for anyone who doesn't know, it's for entrepreneurial dads. And we get together a couple times a year and mastermind about being better husbands to our wives and fathers to our children while we run our businesses. And so this was a really special event. A special group. So I had gone to a few events and I had done my thing and I had written thank you cards to the guys that I had met based on the conversations that I would have. So what it taught me to do was, before I can ever write you a thank you card, I have to know you at a deep level. Yeah. And so what it caused me to do was to be actually very intentional about my conversations. And that's the interesting thing. I think that I believe we have two types of listening that we do in conversations. There's selfish level listening, and selfish level listening is where we listen from the lens of, how is this relevant to me?
Yeah.
What can I get out of this relationship potentially? And I don't know if you guys have ever been in a conversation where you're talking to somebody who's running everything through the selfish level lens of listening, where you can tell they're prospecting you by how they're like the questions they ask and how you answer. Then their eyes start looking around the room for someone else to talk to who might be a greater value.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's the
right,
word.
and that feels disgusting. The other type of listening is what I call servant level listening, which is a way of listening from the lens of, what do I need to know about this person to be of the highest level service? And so there's three questions I learned to ask people in every conversation. Number one is, what's your story? Hey, tell me about your story. How did you get here? Right. So for the Front Row Dad Retreat, right, I'm just saying, hey, so you run a business and you have a family. Like, tell me about that. Like, what's your business? How'd you get into it? And tell me about your wife. Like, how'd you meet your wife? Then when people start to tell you their story, they're inadvertently starting to tell you about their values and their decision-making process, why they do certain things. You can learn a lot about a person just by understanding what's gotten to them to where they are today. Second question is about significance, right? So what do you love about what you do? What are you excited about? What are some of your goals in life, right? And I know as financial service providers, right? Like, that's an important question that y'all ask every client, right? Because it's not just, well, let me just put you in what program I think is best, but it depends, right? What matters to you? Because if you know what is intrinsically motivating to somebody, you really learn about what's going to get them to act and get them to move. And also what's going to get them excited about the pathway that they're on. And third question is about struggle. So story, significance, struggle. Struggle is, hey, what's the hardest thing you're dealing with right now? What's the biggest thing you're afraid of? And it's kind of an uncomfortable question sometimes to ask people, and I don't always ask it as directly as that. Sometimes I might say, hey, what's the biggest hurdle you're trying to deal with in your business? Or hey, what are you struggling with right now? Sure. And when people share that with you, they're starting to share with you about what keeps them up at night, what they're afraid of. And whether I'm in professional sales or I'm just talking to a friend and I know what they're struggling with, man, they're giving me the tools of how to be in relationship with them. Because they're basically saying, if you can help me with these things, I want you a part of my life. Yeah. And so I would ask these three questions of everybody that I'd meet, and then it would help me write them a really good, authentic thank you card, right? And I could say, hey, man, I just so loved our conversation at the retreat and you sharing with me about how long it took you to finally figure out how to run your business. And more importantly, man, I just loved hearing the story about your wife and how you guys fell in love and how you met. And I just think that that's so admirable. And I just want to say thank you so much for being vulnerable and willing to share with me some of those things that you're struggling with, because man, I struggle with some of those things as well. And it's just great to know that I have a friend who's going through the same things as I am. And then I would send a card like that out to people, and they would just reach back like in tears, like, man, thank you. So you were really paying attention. and so it became this conscious process for me about how I meet people. And because throughout our lifetime, we're going to meet approximately 50,000 people. That's what research tells us. Very few of those are going to become connections and relationships. And even fewer of those we're going to have for longer than a weekend. And even fewer we're going to have for years, and even fewer for the rest of our life. And so for me, all the research tells us that the number one indicator of long-term lifetime happiness is positive relationships. And so if that's true, what are we doing to be very intentional about the types of relationships that we're building in our life? And so that's kind of, that was a very unexpected thing. I didn't know that I was going to be learning a process. I was just trying to get a thing done because I had to pay $1,000 if I didn't initially. And so, yeah, that and so much more. But that was kind of, I think, the opening part that was like, it taught me a framework of connection, which was very unexpected.
You think of like how people are in general, like the mindset of everyone, of a little bit off topic, but how it's always like, if this, then I'm going to be happy, or if I get married, or if I buy a house, or if I build success. And we try to tell younger advisors here, when we started out, we had no money, and we've been able to build a decent business. We're not saying we're by any means wealthy, but compared to like these billionaires out there. But the point is, it doesn't change. Like I would say that growth does not change my happiness. You know what I mean? If someone thinks they're going to be happy just by hitting these next check marks or the next thing that they buy or the next car or the next house, they're never going to hit that point. And so many people are afraid to be vulnerable that they never let themselves go to be able to get to that point, to have connections, especially men with other, like having connections with friends. Sometimes it's very surface level, and your friends that you can kind of go deeper on, and that connection is huge. And so for me, faith is the foundation of my life. Friendships, family, obviously the F's, but basically there's so much more, and gratitude comes. It should be in that balance. Should be have a ton of gratitude as well. But sometimes I'm the same way, John. And I'll sometimes be in a conversation and I'm like, I just was one of those people who just wasn't paying attention, or wasn't dialed in like I should be. And I was one of those people that I can't stand when I meet for the first time. That doesn't. So I'm guilty of that at times. You know what I mean? Well,
I think we're all human. I mean, I did love, John, about the idea of like knowing people's story. I used to joke around like, about being in finance. It's funny. I was actually a history major, right? So I joke around because it's like, because I know history a little bit, and because I know geography and maps, and because I'm a sports fan, I love meeting people from all across America, much less the world, like California. Whoa. Like we were talking offline, like you live in Texas and you have a farm, right? Like what's that like? I mean, I think that's such a great, all of them, again, struggle and significance too, but just like the idea of learning someone's story, because everyone has a story to tell. Everyone has a background. Like, Derek was mentioning about the business that we grew. I mean, that obviously has a story to itself, and understanding what formed people and what shaped people always was fascinating to me.
Well, and you're hitting on a really valuable point, which is and I couldn't have told you these words during the project, but now that it's been, over the last 8 years, and I get to speak to a lot of companies and organizations and have conversations, and people say, I relate to that, or, oh, here's how that looked for me. What I learned is that there is a framework to how and why people get and stay in a relationship. Right. And so I call these the hierarchy of human connection. And so if any listeners are married, or you are in a significant relationship, or you want to get closer with your kids, or you're still running a business and you want to just have better culture with your team, this is hyper relevant. And when I share this with you, we can actually play with it a little bit and look at these from different lenses, because these 4 parts, the hierarchy of human connection, you can look at your best relationships, and I can almost guarantee one, multiple, or all of them are in existence. And if you looked at the opposite, which is a relationship that fell apart, I can guarantee you can pinpoint one or multiple of the areas where it fell apart. So here's the structure. We call this a hierarchy of human connection: safe, seen, significant, supported. Safe. If you imagine like a pyramid, this would be like the base level. For any relationship to work, we have to have a basis of psychological safety, which is I can be myself around you, or as a basic level, I know you're not going to hurt me, right? Like that's a fundamental basis of relationship. If you're not going to hurt me, that's
I'm a little nervous sitting next to Matt right here. If I say the wrong thing, he's going to backhand me.
We're still working through things. Yeah. That's why you're on this podcast, John.
We're working through it.
This is actually not just a podcast. This is an intervention between us 3. So
perfect. Yeah. That's funny. But safety also means psychological safety, which means I can be imperfect around you and you're not going to use my weaknesses against me.
Yep.
That's super important, especially for somebody who's in a marriage. And you can tell, sometimes when things are harder, where you talk to friends who are struggling and you can see just how the couple speaks to each other, and the unkind words or the maltreatment, and there's just not safety to be themselves in a relationship, because if I am, then they're going to use that against me. That's a very basic fundamental level of any friendship or relationship. So safety is number 1. Number 2 is seen, right? So to be seen is to be known, right? For people to know who you are from a 360-degree view. That's why I like those three questions: story, significance, struggle, because you're getting to look at somebody's life from multiple different angles. One of the great stories I share in the book is about I was boarding a plane, and before I got on the flight, I noticed that pilots were sitting outside the outside at the food court eating some food. So I walk up and I say, "Hey, do you mind if I sit down?" And they're like, "Sure." So I sit down with these pilots and I go through the questions. I say, "Hey, I'm curious. I've never been a pilot. What's it like to be you? What's your story? How did you get into this?" Both of them had a story. Back when I was a kid, I got fascinated with airplanes, and then I got into the Air Force, and I did that for 2 terms. And then I got out of the Air Force. I want to keep this dream alive, and so I became a commercial airline pilot. So these guys were essentially living their childhood dream. Pretty cool. Second question: what do you love about your job? What's the best part about being a pilot? Well, man, all the free travel, places we get to go. And then one guy kind of puffs his chest up and says, a lot of people like to brag about having the best corner office in the tallest building. Let me tell you, nobody has a better corner office than we do at 30,000 feet.
Yeah.
I thought that's pretty cool. Third question: struggle. What's the hardest part about being a pilot? What's the most difficult part about being you? And the tone gets somber, and they start sharing about all the things they miss back at home. Birthdays, anniversaries, special events. And then one of the guys gets all excited and says, "Not this year. This is the first time in 12 years that I get to be home for Christmas Day." And my heart breaks for this guy, right? And when I write my thank you card to them, when I eventually take off, I listed all of these things out. And I said, I'm sure it's strange to receive a thank you card from a passenger, but as I was boarding the plane, I was thinking about my own issues and how I'm going to miss my family while I'm gone. And then I realized this is what you do every day for your job. Yeah. I can't imagine how many birthdays, anniversaries, things you've missed and sacrificed, all that to have a bad landing and people complain about it. So whether you hear it enough or not, I just want to say thank you. That's what it means to be seen, to have somebody who cares enough about you to look at you from multiple different angles, to really understand who you are at a deep core level and to acknowledge you for it and to highlight the positives. So that's what it means to be seen. Significant is to feel like our life matters, right? Again, so we talked about that negativity bias. That goes just with every relationship. If you you take one of your kids, or you take your spouse, you take your parents, you can highlight everything they've done wrong. You remember all the times they broke a promise, all the times they did something they shouldn't have done. And it's so easy to highlight those and to notice them and to remind them of it. But if we have people in our lives that remind us of the positive things, don't you love being around people who just make you feel good? Like, isn't it interesting how when we're around some people, they pull out the worst of us, and some people pull out the best? Why is that? Because there's something about people who acknowledge and appreciate us for the good that we do, that we just want to be around them more. And the last one is support, right? Which is, why are we in relationships in the first place? Because we need support. If we're struggling, we're having a hard time. I spoke at a real estate conference, and a woman comes up to me and she says, I had gallbladder surgery, and I live in a condo townhome community. And one of my friends, I said, "Hey, I'm going to have surgery pretty soon. And I was wondering if you could work a meal train out for people to bring by some food, because I can't leave the house after surgery." And her friend says, "Well, why don't you just do Uber Eats?" And you could see this person's heart break. Yeah. Because, and I think this is one of the problems happening in society, right? There's this big concern about AI making us irreplaceable, or making us replaceable. But I think actually we are the ones who are making ourselves replaceable by how we're treating each other and choosing to delegate showing up for people the technology rather than actually doing it ourselves. And the woman says, and the worst part of it was I saw her walk her dog past my apartment door. And I think we can say these things on a surface level and be like, that's terrible. Why would someone do that? But don't we also do that in our own ways by ignoring and not paying attention to subtle calls for help of people around us? So to back up a little bit, right? Safe, seen, significant, supported, right? I bet if we look at the relationships that we care about the most, that we want to keep around, they probably fit one, if not all of those categories. And those that have fallen apart at some point, probably there's a way that they dishonored one of those categories.
Yeah, no, it's crazy, John. And I know those listeners, Matt, Keith, they know how I feel about my dad. But he's always been, it's amazing. I think he might have been the originator of this whole process, but I've always been fascinated by how, even like I was walking with some friends from church this past weekend, and they were like, your dad just shows up. He creates a different experience every time he shows up, and he always remembers, like, one of my friends played in the NHL, and my dad sent him this like card of his and this nice pack. Just thinking about you. And then next person, he heard they're having surgery. A friend of ours from our town that he barely knows, and your dad made this shepherd's pie and dropped it off at our house. And always like these little. Same thing. He's very curious, way better than I am at this. By the way, I'm not. I probably fell further from the tree than I should have, the apple. But it's that like always looking for ways to just show up for other people, make them feel good about themselves. And in turn, you notice everyone wants to be around my dad. You know what I mean? Because they have that feeling. And sometimes you don't think about the psychology of all that. And he's not doing it to get. Trust me, he's not doing it to get that. But it's just natural. It's naturally how things work. And also for him, the downside is everyone in the family goes to him with any major concerns. Or he's always like, he does have the downside of having to deal with all the issues because he's always been the one to support them during the trials. You know what I mean? So it's a weird fundamental process when you look at how that's happened over my lifetime and just seeing it play out.
Well, I love that. Thanks for sharing, because I think that there are people like that in our lives that we can point to and be like, yeah, like they did it. Like did they read some book? And I think that for a lot of them, it's just maybe how they grew up, or maybe something that they didn't have that they want to provide for other people, or maybe a great example they saw. I mean, who knows how we all become who we are. But that's a beautiful example. And I think for many of us who, again, the world that we live in isn't pulling for community right now.
Yeah, I mean,
right. The world that we live in is pulling for attention, and when what they know, and I'm just going to keep beating this drum. What people know, what social media knows, what every marketing agency knows, is that we're more prone to look at the worst things on the internet than we are to look for the good things.
Of course,
it's just a fact, right? You wake up in the morning, you open your phone, you look on social media, and they're like, "Here are the worst things that happened on planet Earth in the last 24 hours. Good luck at work."
And then the news is like flashing red everywhere, and the market's collapsing, and and it's like whoa.
And it's hard not to feel that way. And so and this is where I think I got lucky. Honestly, I don't think I was expecting it to be this impactful, but just understanding that fact, how I feel at any given moment is up to me. And so the hardest question that I had to learn how to answer this year, or during that project, is how do you be grateful when you don't feel like it?
That was my next question, was how do, like, for you personally, I was going to ask you as well, how, like, when you went through that process, like, did your mindset just change? Did you just feel happier? Explain that process, because you went through it for a year. You obviously lived it out. Like, did you literally feel a change in your being, like, during that process? And then how, when you are having those days where you're just like, this sucks, this, whatever, the weather, this, that, how do you get yourself out of it?
Yeah. Well, I think that, so for starters, yeah, I mean, I still got the flu, and I still wrote my 5 cards. My wife was giving birth in the hospital, or actually at home, we had a home birth, and I was writing cards while she was in labor. It's pretty funny. So, like, no matter what, I was doing it. And it was this fascinating thing, because I didn't want to cheapen it. I didn't want it to be generic. Hey, thanks for the thing. Boom. Like 3 seconds. This was actually a strange fact. I did this math afterwards. It took me an average of about 90 minutes a day to do the project. So, like, because I wanted every card to be actually thoughtful. And when you total that out, 90 minutes times 365 days, it was 22 and a half straight 24-hour days spent writing. That's almost a month, 24-hour days writing thank you cards. That's crazy. So at a minimum, it was a muscle to build, right? Yeah. Here's the thread of the lesson I'll break everything down from the entire project in the definition of gratitude that I learned. This is from Dr. Robert Emmons from UC Davis. Here's what he says. Gratitude is the emotion one feels when receiving a gift or experiencing something as a gift. That makes a lot of sense, right? If somebody gives you a gift unexpectedly, it's not even your birthday. How do you feel? That joy, that excitement, that in essence is gratitude. The other part of that definition, though, is the experience of something as a gift. Well, what does that mean? That's how you choose to interpret what you're going through or something that happened. And an example that we can all relate to is maybe the first time that we ever fell in love right? I remember this little girl, she was 12, we were 12 years old. I was holding her hand at the mall and I'm like, we're going to get married one day, right? And then she breaks up with me and asks out my best friend on a date. like, how am I supposed to feel in that moment, right? Like I remember taking the coldest shower of my life and feeling like the world is over, right? We can relate to something like that. And in the moment, it feels so painful, but yet with time and perspective, I can look back on that experience and say, I'm actually really glad that happened. Because that happened, I learned a lot about myself. Because that happened, actually, I wound up meeting somebody else that I got married to and I started a family with. So I can actually, in the current modern day, feel gratitude from this previously painful experience. And so the question becomes, how long does it take us to feel gratitude from a previously painful experience? And the answer is as long as it takes you to find the gift.
That's crazy.
And in every life experience, there is a gift, but it is your job to find it. So just the point is that awareness was life-changing. Because this year was no short. Every normal problem I get still happened. I still had cancellations in our business, which every business deals with. We had, team attrition, people leave, and doesn't feel good. My wife and I still get in arguments from time to time. That doesn't feel good. So many things didn't feel good, but yet for me, for the first time, I had this tool, which is to understand that, hey, inside of this experience, whatever I'm going through, there's something good to come of it. I'm the one who needs to figure that out. And the moment I figure that out, that gives me control over how I feel in any given moment. That is powerful, whether you're talking about your personal life or your professional life.
But even it's biblical, right? You think about like, it talks about how there's things that are going to be thrown our way, but it's a blessing. And I always look at things, I wish I had known, like you said, if you go through each moment, and this is something I'm sure I'm going to take good use out of this conversation, but I remember when I was in college, right when I graduated, I was a finance major, and this moment was so clear to me. I was like, I had 4 interviews at this firm in Boston. I was gonna be driving to the city every day. Not that there's anything wrong with that. And they, after the 4th interview, they said, "Oh, I'm sorry, we gave it to someone else." And you didn't get the job, and I was crushed. Went back to work with my dad temporarily, doing drywall plastering. If you know what that is, not an easy job. I'm like, man, here I am. Went to college, thought I was going to be able to get into the finance world, and then kind of slowly made my way into a company. Met Matt and Keith. This is 2002. By 2003, we started this company, and here it is 22 years later. So, obviously I've seen that for years, the blessing that was, but in the moment it was like earth shattering. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and I wish I could go back in those situations as they come. And this is something we can all do going forward, is take what's coming at us and what good can come out of that? Like how do you perceive it? You know what I mean? Sounds like that's
absolutely. And there's that's a beautiful example, by the way. Thanks for sharing that, because I think that, so I have a small coaching practice myself where I'll work with individual business owners to help them kind of like navigate life balance, right? Because it's hard when you're running a big business. Mm-hmm. And so if someone is of faith, there's 3 questions I ask them when they're in a really tough spot, just kind of like what you're talking about. So I'm curious, I'm going to ask you these questions like you were a client. So do you mind answering?
Sure.
Let's do it. Open book.
So do you believe God is good?
Yes.
Do you believe God is sovereign, that he rules over everything?
Of course.
Do you believe God makes mistakes?
No.
He doesn't. If those 3 things are true,
you're right.
There's a reason that you're going through what you're going through. Yep. There's something here for you. And I think that, whether we can get that immediately or not, but the moment we can actually grasp that as like truth, it actually is very helpful. We may not know the answer. We may not know the gift right now. And by the way, people have challenged me on this. I spoke at an event. I got invited to speak to a group of widows and their children. It was a retreat for recently widowed moms. Talk about like a heart-wrenching experience. I mean, all of these people, they showed up with anything from infants to like 20-year-old kids. And there was a room, and I was talking to them, and I was sharing the story. And a girl stands up during Q&A and she says, how do I find the gift in my dad dying?
That's powerful.
I mean, you talk about sucking the wind out of a room. I mean, and I thought about it because I don't want to just give her a trite answer. And I said, it can almost seem disrespectful to even consider that question, right? Meaning, where's the gift in my dad's death? We don't even want to ask it because it seems like we're going to dishonor his memory.
Mm.
And I'm not trying to tell you there's a gift in your dad's death. What I'm telling you is there might be a gift of something that comes out of it for you that would have never happened otherwise. As an example, maybe after your dad's passing, it's actually caused your family to become closer than they've ever been. Maybe because your dad's passing, it's going to require you to help out your family more and for you to get a job earlier in life than all of your friends, which is going to cause you to grow up and have an advantage in how you show up in the world later in life. And I'm not saying that you need to know that right now. I'm just inviting you to be open to the idea that in some way, shape, or form, something will happen for you in your life out of your dad's death that you can be grateful for, not that he passed away, but because of the gift that he left for you. That's what I try to go back to, is as hard as it is. And it doesn't necessarily even mean that there's a gift like in a neatly wrapped bow. Sometimes it's just the ingredients of a gift. Sometimes it's an attitude shift that you would have never experienced otherwise. Because can either of you guys agree that some of the greatest character qualities you possess have come from going through the hardest times of your life?
Absolutely. You embrace adversity. I mean, obviously not to that level. Not that I'm, thankfully I've not had to put up with that or experience that. But it's similar to you can't control what happens to you. You can control your reactions, right? And you can embrace adversity, embrace the ability for those types of things. That's where iron is forged, is in the fires.
Yeah. And so I think that's probably one of the most powerful takeaways is just realizing that gratitude truly is a tool for healing and for transformation and for growth. Is that if we can be open to the blessings and the gifts, and it's okay to not feel that right away, and it's okay to not ask that question immediately if someone passes or something really challenging happens, but purely to be open to it, because we've also experienced people in life who are still complaining about something that happened 20 years ago, and they haven't moved on, and they don't have gratitude in their heart, and it's affecting other areas of their life.
Look at the political landscape of like, no matter what side you're on, you're still, whether it was 2 months ago or 4 years ago, or, you know what I mean? Like, the whole process divides people, and there's what's the word? No, it's a no sum game.
Oh, zero sum game. Either winning or you're losing. Yeah. There's nothing.
What are you really trying? What's that going to get anyone? So similar process, similar comparison.
Absolutely.
So as we kind of wrap up this, and this has been awesome. Thank you. The perspective's amazing. What would you say? I know I've heard the story of the pilots. I know the waitress story with the Front Row Dads group. And that might be the best. Is there like a story that worth going out on that was through your experience, or just even after through coaching or different things that you've experienced? Is there one story that like, man, I got to share this that you think would benefit?
Yeah. So this is this actually happened after the fact. So this isn't even in my book because it happened after it was already published. So here's an interesting stat I'll ask you guys about. Out of writing all those thank you cards, right, 1,825 in a year, what percentage of people who received a card from me do you think responded about it?
1,825, probably
like what percent do you think?
25%.
40%. So the answer is 10%.
Wow.
So when you think about that, it's roughly about 185 people out of 1,800. Now, so in ways, that's a little disheartening, right? Because you're like, and there was a moment I wrote about this in the book because there was this experience of like, does anyone care about this? Like, I'm gonna just beat my head against the wall here. Does this matter? And it was such an important point because I was realizing that this had suddenly become about me. And that was a huge awareness, which is because when you talk about the terms gratitude, another similar word is generosity. Generosity is when something is given freely without expecting anything in return. And so, most people, if I were to say, hey, do you think you're a generous person? We would all say, yeah, for sure. Well, let me know if you guys can relate to this, right? Where let's say you give a really nice gift to somebody and maybe you send them a bunch of money for their wedding, and then they don't even respond. How does that feel?
Yeah, if you're being that generous, you wouldn't be expecting the response. So you're not
You would think so, but doesn't it still eat us alive?
Oh yeah, of course.
Oh,
of course,
right, absolutely.
Of course.
The nerve of that person.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, did I do something wrong? Are you upset with me? And then it's like, how dare they? I can't believe they don't say anything back. And we get so distraught. And then here's this interesting thing that happens throughout life, right? Where the next opportunity to play generously, we'll say, okay, I'll play generously, but a little bit less. And then maybe I'll play generously again, but a little bit less, and then a little bit less. And then we're playing this tit for tat, what have you done for me lately kind of experience. And if we're not careful, we can actually transactionalize our life, because the moment we need to receive appreciation for the good that we do is no longer generosity. We have transactionalized the relationship. And there's a point in the year project where I realized I had done that with virtually every relationship, even my marriage and with my family. So that number, by the way, 10%, that even equated to my family's response. So I sent them out to, I'm from a big Catholic family, right? 5 kids, all of them are married. I sent them to everyone, their spouses, my parents, and that same number applied. 10% replied, my one sister. So after the project is over, by the way, that includes my parents, just to mind you. Your project is over. My dad has been suffering with Parkinson's disease at this point for about 18 years. He's pretty far along. He's bedridden. I go visit my mom in San Diego, California, where I'm originally from. And she's just beside herself. She's just super stressed out. We're having a private conversation at the dinner table, and she says, John, you sent me a letter last year, and I so deeply wanted to appreciate it, but I just can't, because I'm in so much pain here taking care of your dad by myself. It was probably one of the first times I actually listened to my mom. And I just said, what do you need? How can I help? And she just shared, hey, there's 5 kids. I would love if all of you came and watched dad for a week so that I can get some respite and go do something for myself. And I said, you got it, whatever you need. So I jumped into businessman mode and I got everyone on a conference call. I'm like, we got to help out mom. Everyone pick a week. And we all did. And I got to spend a week with my dad. And then when my final sister spent her week with my dad, he passed away that weekend. Mm-hmm. And so when I think about that experience, I'm just reminded of, number one is you never know what someone's going through. So you can't take it personal if they don't say anything.
Sure.
The other point is answering this question, which is, how do you treat that for which you are grateful? Because I can tell you all day long how much I appreciate you, but if I never back that up with action, do I really mean it? Doesn't that seem odd? Like, imagine my wife, this happened the other day. She was like cooking bacon in our kitchen the other day, like bacon, like pops grease, right? She's holding a baby in one hand. And what I wanted to say was like, honey, you're doing so great. Thank you so much for how hard you're working. Is that what my wife needed in that moment? No, she needed me to say, hey, I'll take the baby. Let me help you. Sometimes that's what it means to appreciate somebody, is to do something for them, to show up for them, to help them with their deepest need. And if you want to know how to make lifelong connection, it's to serve people in their deepest need. Because if you do that, you become somebody who they don't want to live without. And I don't care at what stage or age of life you are, we all want somebody who's going to show up for us. So,
Yeah.
Well, and I was going to say, John, and thanks so much, because I did want to share a little bit. I know we're wrapping up soon, Derek, but just the idea of that type of relationship building and being there for our clients, and how your sort of philosophy, or at least your teachings and your practice, is something that we certainly have tried to incorporate here at SHP. In regards to asking clients, not just how much do you spend, how much do you save, but no, truly trying to understand them on a very personal and deeper level, so that we can create that type of significance in their own lives, and then to be there, during those moments. And actually, ironically enough, Derek's dad was involved in this, but I lost a very good client of mine in January of this year, and just being there for the husband who lost his wife of after many years, and that type of the bonds that are formed, during those types of moments, and just not looking for anything out of it, but just more being there for him as a support during those times. And not that it happens all the time, nor do we want it to happen all the time. But I certainly can stress that what you teach is something that we absolutely try to live day to day with our client relationships.
And this wasn't even planned, but to put a bow, no pun intended, on this podcast, as Matt just mentioned, when that client passed away, she was near and dear to our hearts. Back to my dad, not even my client, Matt's client, he builds this relationship with their family, right? Goes to their funeral in Boston, like way away from where we live. And I come home from a trip from Florida. On my desk is a note from her husband and said, "Hey, I know your dad really loved Bobby Orr. I want him to have this." It was basically a Bobby Orr signed game jersey that they had given my dad. So think about the gifting back. Obviously, my dad didn't do that for anything, but that whole full circle there of the appreciation, gratitude, being there, showing up. I mean, that was all wrapped together. It's amazing when the Matt just brought that up because that wasn't even on my radar. But think about how that all played out in that one story. And obviously, the gratitude was high all across the board. In showing up for Matt showed up for them. My dad showed up for them. We were, and they recognize it, and they'll be lifelong friends. The family is her husband, son, daughter, going to be lifelong friends, family, clients for ongoing. So it's amazing when you think of like how that all works out when you do things the right way and show up for people.
Yeah, well, and this is this might be a weird turn, but I think it's relevant to what you're talking about here, which is y'all deal with wills and trusts and things like that. And there's this, it doesn't matter who you are in relation to somebody, whether you're related or you're a business associate or you're their caretaker. We are connected to those that show up for us. We are connected to those that help make us feel safe, seen, significant, and supported. And it's just one of those things that, you can have really great personal relationships with people in business, right? And in some ways, right, and this is to like call attention where there might be lacking for anybody who's listening here, but it's like there are some reasons why people get really attached to their careers and their jobs because they leave a house where they feel unrecognized and appreciated, and they go to an office where people love and appreciate the value of the hard work they put in, right? And vice versa, we get that. So we go where the needs are going to be met. And so I love that you guys do this inside of your business because ultimately that's what we want to provide for people. You're not trying to take a place of somebody, but it's like something that we all desire is we want to be in relationship. And so especially with what you guys do, it's such a long-term connection with somebody. I bet there's some really great partnerships, relationships that you've built with clients that you'll do business with them, you'll do business with their kids because there's been such time spent together. And that's beautiful. I think ideally, that's how business should be run.
Yeah, absolutely.
And unfortunately, and I think the consumers, some listeners who are listening can probably relate to this, that's not how all businesses run. And there's that moment where you've been in conversation with someone you've been in business with and you get that vibe that you're just a number. Right? Maybe it's that email blast they send you where they misspelled your name. Maybe when they get together with you and they forgot your spouse's name, right? Any number of things that just have us feel like does this person really care? So I'm grateful that, we'll be doing an event together later on in the year is that like y'all are a very well producing team for a reason because you build these types of relationships with your clients. That's why I'm excited to work with you guys.
Yeah, as we close things up, John is going to actually come and work with us on a client appreciation event, which we're really excited. We're recording this early Q2 2025. Later this fall, we're going to have John be part of a client appreciation event. So if you're a client, obviously you're going to be excited at that after listening to this podcast. And in the meantime, if you want to get ahead of it, the book is Mr. Thank You Project, right?
Yep.
By John Israel. And this was awesome. Honestly, thank you so much for your time. And this was just awesome. And we look forward to connecting down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Retirement Roadmap podcast by SHP Financial. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button so future episodes are automatically downloaded directly to your device. And if you've liked what you heard, please share the show. Create your own little ripples so we can help even more people with their retirement goals. If you want access to all past interviews, including notes, resources, and exclusive content from SHP Financial, visit shpfinancial.com/podcast. Thanks again for joining us on the Retirement Roadmap podcast. And for all the attorneys out there and disclaimers and disclosures, I'm just going to put on my super serious voice and add our own. No statements made during the Retirement Roadmap podcast shall constitute tax, legal, or accounting advice. You should consult your own legal or tax professional on any such matters. Information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk, and unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Our investment advisory services are offered through SHP Wealth Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Insurance sales are offered through SHP Financial, LLC. Our advisors and insurance reps may offer clients advice and/or products from each entity. No client is under any obligation to purchase any insurance product.